Hi there, Laura here from Get Organized HQ, and I want to share with you my number one tip for dealing with sentimental clutter. Not only is this a tip that I don't hear talked about very often, I've literally never heard anyone else share this, so I'm excited for you to learn about this. But let's just dive in by talking a little bit about sentimental clutter and what it is. So when it comes to decluttering, you've probably heard people say this, and I think this is so true. By far, the most tricky and challenging area to tackle is that sentimental clutter. The practical clutter for me is just so much easier. There's not that emotional attachment. It's more objective to say, do I use this? How often do I use this? When might I use this? How easy or hard would it be to replace? How expensive or inexpensive would it be to replace? Those are pretty straightforward, easy questions. But the sentimental is just in a league of its own because we are asking, how would I feel if I got rid of this? What does this mean to me? And that is so much more challenging. I'm going to start with the most frequent tips that you've heard out there, but I think it's still helpful to be reminded of them and to think about them. And then we'll get down to the ones that I don't hear as often, ending with the one that I've never heard. So first, we always recommend that you start with other types of clutter and you don't try to start with sentimental clutter. Now, if you happen to run across some while you're decluttering and you know what to do with it, great, deal with it. But don't start with your decluttering journey of like, I'm going to go to this sentimental clutter that's been stored in my attic for 20 years. That's not the place to start. Start with something else. That's the first thing you should do. Second, realize that this decision of what to keep and what to get rid of is very personal to you. So there is not a right or a wrong answer. And I don't want you to let everyone else's opinions and answers influence you because on many occasions, I have heard of something that someone decluttered and I was like, oh, I would never declutter that. For example, someone who's a minimalist shared that they decluttered their wedding dress. They just donated it somewhere and they were very happy with that decision. I have no intention of ever getting rid of my wedding dress. Am I ever going to use it? I mean, no, I hope not. I don't plan to get married again. I'm happily married. It doesn't even fit. It takes up a lot of space. It was like one of those big poofy dresses, but I don't want to part with it. I would feel very sad if I parted with it. Every time I thought about it, I wouldn't feel this relief and this joy about having passed it on to someone. I would feel like, oh no, I want to look at it. I put a lot of effort into what dress I picked. I picked one that I just absolutely loved and felt amazing and beautiful in. And I hope that one day my daughter can try it on. I have memories as a girl of trying on my mom's wedding dress with my cousins. And even though it was yellowed, it really was, we still had so much fun with it. And I love that. And I want to keep that. And just because someone else decided to declutter their dress and they're super happy with it, that's fantastic. But this is not the time to let other people's opinions pressure you because you don't want to regret it. And unlike pretty much any other category of clutter, this is the one that you could regret getting rid of. If you're getting rid of something for a practical purpose and you end up needing it, I mean, maybe you might think, oh, I could have used that 20th roll of packing tape because I didn't know we were going to move in, a few weeks after I decluttered it or something like that. You might think that, but you're not going to be heart-wrenched. You're just going to go buy another roll of packing tape, right? So this is the one where you might have regrets. And I don't want to say that to scare you away from decluttering. Well, I guess I have to keep everything, but I do want you to take the time to think about it and make sure that you're making the right decisions for you. And just to give you another example of times when people regretted something, I can't think of any from my own life that I have regretted decluttering, but I do know I was reading a post in our Facebook group, I'll link to that down below if you want to join, where someone said that they had decluttered kind of diaries and journals that they had written, many years ago when they were younger, and they shredded them all and they now regret it. They don't remember a lot about that, and that they wish they had held on to those. So, that's just one example of someone who regretted that. And I will also tell you, I kept, I guess you would call them diaries when I was 12, 13, 14, 15, those kind of ages. And I got them. I kind of flipped through them. My mom was clearing out some stuff one time. She came to me. I was probably at the time into my 30s, so it was many years past. And I looked through them and I got rid of them. And I don't feel bad about that at all. Now, some people might, but I have a very good memory of those times. I have a lot of photos of those times. And here was the other thing for me personally about that decision is when I read through them, they weren't actually very representative of me or what was happening at the time. I wrote them, it wasn't like a kind of like a, oh, here's kind of what's going on in life or anything like that. I only wrote in them at highly emotional times when I was just reacting in very absurd ways. And it just wasn't representative of anything at all. I wouldn't even feel good giving it to my own daughter to read because it was just, like I said, there was no good feelings. I couldn't see anyone using it. So I got rid of them and I don't regret it. So there is no right or wrong here. Someone else got rid of some of theirs and they regretted it. Maybe they were different. Maybe they liked them more. So I just want to encourage you to take your time with this. There is no timeline, and make careful decisions regarding this. Now, when it comes to actually making these decisions of what to get rid of, I think the questions that you ask for sentimental clutter can sometimes be a little bit different than the rest of clutter. Like, you don't really necessarily have to ask, do I use it? Although if you can use it, all the better, because you're going to get more joy out of that item. You're going to see it more often. But one of the questions that I ask about the items is, what's going to happen to this item? Like, what do I envision happening to it? And kind of in the mode of Swedish desk cleaning, and I have an entire video on that. There's a whole book about that. It's actually a really neat concept where you're almost preparing for the fact that you're not going to be here forever and what's going to happen to this stuff when you go. Instead of waiting until you're actually gone and leaving people to deal with it, you're able to sort it out beforehand and experience the joy of giving it to someone and seeing them enjoy it. So in that concept, I kind of think about that. And you do this at whatever age. You do not have to be older. You can do this when you're 20, when you're 30, 40, 80, whatever age you are. Just think, where do I envision this going? Who is going to take this after I am gone? And sometimes that provides clarity for me because, like, I have tons of stuff from someone and I'm like, is my daughter or son going to care about this at all? In some cases, yes. Like, if it's my own parent and that was their grandparent, they're going to love them, remember them, probably want to have things to remember them by. But if it was, say, my own grandparent that my child never knew, are they really going to care about this, like, old family heirloom or old broken set of china? That often helps me make a decision when I realize, like, what is actually going to happen to this. No one's going to care and they're just going to get rid of it. Then that can help win clarity and help me feel better about letting go of things. Another question I love to ask is, can I use this item? So if there's any items that you can actually use, I am all for it. So, like, let's say you have like an old set of china. Could you, if it's up in your attic, could you move it to somewhere in your kitchen? Because, like, let's face it, if something's in your attic and you have to get out a ladder and go through all this, you're not going to use it. But can you bring it somewhere where it's more accessible? Could you use it either on a regular basis? Maybe you could make it your daily stuff you eat off of, or maybe just, every couple months when you have a dinner party or a special occasion, or make it your treat china. Like, maybe on everyone's birthday, and half birthday, they get to use a special china, something like that. But is there a way you could actually use it? Because that's just going to make it way easier to decide to keep. It's something that you'll get joy out of because it's going to do you much, much more good if you have the china out and you can enjoy it, and it can spark conversations like, Mom, where did you get this china? Well, that came from your great grandmother and she got it when she was on a trip in Europe or whatever. You can tell the story and you can enjoy it. So anything that you could possibly use, I encourage you to do that. Now, if it's not an item you can actually use, like, china that you can eat off of, and it's literally like a card, a photo, something like that, is there a way that you can make it more accessible to be more enjoyed? So, like, for example, let's say you kept tons of, like, greeting cards that people had sent you over the years. If you leave them in a box in the attic, you're probably never going to see them again, or you're only going to see them every 10 years when you try to clean out the attic. No one's going to be able to see those, enjoy those. You're just not going to get any benefit out of those. Versus if you can put it in a format that it can be easily enjoyed. So, for example, could you take, like, a photo, one of those photo books and slip the cards in there, or scan them and make a little photo book out of them or something like that. Get them in a way that they can actually be enjoyed, and then put that book, in your living room with your family photo albums so you and others can actually enjoy it. So any way that you can bring it out is better than leaving it tucked away in an attic. So if you can't find a way to either use the item or put it in some kind of, like, album that people kind of enjoy it, the next thing I like to think about is there a way I can cut it down to more of a representative sample? So, for example, let's say that I had a huge jewelry collection from a grandmother who's passed away, and she used to love jewelry and she had all sorts of jewelry. Maybe it's not important to me to keep every piece of it. Maybe I can pare down to like my top 10 or 20 pieces. And then that would be more feasible to put in with my own jewelry and maybe actually wear, or just hang up a couple pieces if it's not the type of thing I would wear that I can enjoy. So that would be one thing. And even if I can't do that, just to pare it down. Now, that may not feel right to you. You may feel like, no, I remember all of these. I really want to touch them. That's okay. But if there is a way to pare down to a representative sample, I think that is a great way to go and still remember that person and still hang on to like those memories, but without having to store a whole bunch of stuff that you're never going to use. Another thing you can definitely do if you don't feel like you need to hold the physical item is take a photo of it. I love this for so many things. For some things, like let's say it was like a teddy bear that was cherished by a child, I might want to literally just hold that and see how worn it is and feel it. But for other things, especially for me, for my kids' outfits, I don't know why I get very, very sentimentally attached to like what they wore, because usually I remember the experience of buying it. I oddly remember where we were, what store we bought it from, how much it was. I don't know why I remember these weird details. And I remember them wearing it. And I'm like, I remember when they wore it when we went on that trip. And I remember they wore it that ordinary day, but it was just such an amazing day. And like, just triggers so many memories. And honestly, by nature, I have an urge to keep almost every single thing that they wore, but that would be just wildly impractical because then my storage area would be taken up by old clothes, and I want people to enjoy them. And what would I ever do with them? And why would they want them when they leave? They probably wouldn't. So instead, I focus on taking a photo of the child wearing that outfit. So I really try to get photos of most of my favorite outfits. And that actually means more to me than the physical clothes themselves, because then I see the child in it, and that is the way that I remember those. And I do keep just a very few of my very favorite outfits, like the one that my daughter wore home from the hospital that I also wore home from the hospital. She asked me about it the other day, and she was like, Mom, could my baby wear that home? And I'm like, yes, I have it. Let me show it to you. So we got it out. And because I only have one small bin, about this size in her closet of the sentimental clothing, I didn't need to put it in a storage room or an attic. It was right there in her closet, and I could easily pull it down and show it to her. And I was like, yep, this is the one that I wore home from the hospital. Here's one more that you wore and I wore. And then I know it looks like a doll clothes, but you really did fit in it. And here's one of my favorite outfits you've ever had. And so we were able to actually enjoy it, versus if I'd had just like tons and they were put away somewhere, we wouldn't even be able to enjoy that moment. So sometimes you're literally able to enjoy the things more when you have less of them and they're more accessible to you. So I sort of already mentioned this, but I want to say it again because I really want you to hear it. There's no arbitrary rules or anything like that. And if you have the space to store it and you want to, then by all means keep it. If you have an organized attic and you like knowing that all the sentimental stuff is there, I see no problem with that. Keep it. There is no reason why you just need to arbitrarily get rid of it. Now, if you don't like it there, if you have a smaller space and it's just causing issues in being able to store the things that you need, that might be a good time to prompt you to get rid of some of it. Now, this is the tip that I haven't ever heard anyone say, but it has worked really well for me, and it's not going to apply to all your types of clutter. That's why I really wanted you to hear all that advice for all the clutter, sentimental clutter you probably already have sitting around. But the best thing you can do is declutter during the sweet spot of time. So if you can declutter in the right amount of time after that thing was created or you had it, it's going to be so much easier. So this is what I have found, and this is especially true with kid stuff. If I try to declutter it the instant that it is there, so like they draw me a picture and then write me a note about like, hey mom, I love you, or something like that, and draw me a beautiful picture. In that moment, I'm always gonna wanna keep it. They just drew it. They just gave it to me. All the emotions are there. Everything that your kids, or if you have grandkids that they do, is always, amazing. And so you're gonna feel like you want to keep that. Now, let's say we fast forward like 15 or 20 years, a long period of time. Oh my goodness, then everything they did is so precious. Oh, their handwriting was so young. Look at the funny way they spelled that word. Oh, I remember when they used to use that phrase. Oh my goodness, they added 1 + 2 and now they're literally a rocket scientist working for NASA. And everything seems so special, and it's harder to get rid of it. But the sweet spot for me is somewhere between 3 months and a year. Because even 2 or 3 weeks after they drew me the picture, and certainly by 3 months, it doesn't have that same emotion. I don't have all the really strong memories of them giving it to me. And so I'm more easily able to part with it, but it's not so long that it's just, oh my good, it's been so long since they've been that size. So it's just easier to part with things. So I like to do it in that sweet spot. So like, for example, with their school papers, I like to collect them for about 3 or 4 months and then go through them. And also I have a more representative sample. So I'm realizing, do I need every spelling test that my kid took? I mean, no. Let's save one spelling test from the year, and that's a good representative sample of what they do. So I think if you want to try this, and really try it for incoming clutter, so that way you've got a process for dealing with anything that's coming in that is sentimental. You're going to keep from piling on and adding onto it, and do it in that sweet spot, and I think you're going to find it a lot easier. If you like tips like this that you may not be hearing everywhere else to help you declutter, then definitely check out my video on reverse decluttering. It's a very unique method I use that makes decluttering in general a lot easier.